Warning, Squad 5 uses flamethrowers, incendiary devices, and harsh language. Squad 5 is not responsible for any fire and smoke damage incurred throughout combat operations. All infected tissue is pacified and sterilized, guaranteed. Thank you.
Shaniqua had been dragged the whole way and her shoulder felt out of place. Staring over the attacker, who went beyond just rapist, Cecilia tugged gently at Shaniqua. Come on, we gotta go. He's getting up. He's coming back. He in fact hobbled away, to climb back down the opposite side, forever out of sight. Cecilia realized something wet ran down from her neck. With her bloodied knife hand, she felt at the injury he'd inflicted on her. Her head swam and sweat beaded up all over her skin as if to put out a fiery fever building up underneath.
Hey, all right. Welcome to SLCC Talk Show, everyone. We have acclaimed vampire novelist John Steiner from the Learning Center on the program today. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're promoting John Steiner's new book, Snowflake Girl, an urban fictional story that documents the life of a struggling dancer who gets attacked by a vampire shortly before she's forced to go on the run while being pursued by Squad 5, a special ops team that's dedicated to the annihilation of vampires all over the world. I'm very pleased to welcome John Steiner back on this program. John, welcome, sir. Now, before we start talking about this book, tell us a little bit about your education and how that contributes towards your passion as a writer.
I did realize when I got my degree in biology, I decided I'd rather not do anything in the field of science as much as in science fiction. And aliens and vampires, all these things dealt with scientific concepts that I thought would be really fascinating as a story format.
Now, the first chapter of Snowflake Girl, I'm going to hold it up here for the camera. I read this interesting part where Cecilia is on stage in a strip club providing this really fun and entertaining dance for her audience. And I was just wondering where you might have gotten the inspiration for that unique and visually graphic scene.
Cecilia, her first love is always modern dance, and it's something she was doing in high school as a character. But when she gets this affliction, she realizes she can't do any day jobs that involve dance, and so the only place left are the after-hour places and strip clubs.
And so the audience knows what is her affliction. And
so her affliction is vampirism. She gets it accidentally after the attack, because she gets herself accidentally infected with blood into an open wound. So she's like, well, I can't do modern dance during the day. She can run really fast, but of course she can't do a track program at night. So that the performance was all about her trying to express her art, but at the same time try to arouse her audience, but introduce art into their lives.
I also noticed that you use a lot of biology terms in this book, which is no surprise to me because you have a degree in biology. But did you ever fear that maybe like some of the people when they read the book at the first time who didn't have degrees in biology might not understand some of the parts?
Yeah, this is one of the advantages of having been a tutor for 11 years was taking techno speak and turning it into lay person speak. And that was really useful in writing because I could always say, I'm introducing something that some PhD came up with, but it has to be designed for mass consumption. I think growing up and watching a lot of nature documentaries, I think helped with that, because you're trying to make science appeal to a mass public. And there were ideas of science that I thought were so fascinating. I was just amazed that no one attempted to do a story with it.
So you have some characters in this novel that have like their faith in like religion, and they go really in detail talking about it. What was the inspiration behind some of those scenes?
I had met Lawrence Duran's actually based on someone I know, a good friend of mine, and the way he lived his life as an evangelical Christian, even someone who's an atheist, I was inspired by that. And I thought, okay, there are Christians like him out there, and it would be amazing to see how they would tackle things in life. To really, because these are the kind of Sermon on the Mount Christians. If someone asks for their coat, they also provide their shirt. They're providing for the lowest among them. And what I did in the story was create what would be a coming to Jesus moment even for someone who's religious, and say, can you follow this man's teachings regardless who he turns out to be?
My favorite part in the book was where they had those religious folks who thought like one of the ghouls in the book was possessed by the devil.
Yeah.
So his friends are like cussing and swearing and shouting out a storm of profanity, and they're like, "You better watch your mouth, son."
Yeah, I call them the Holy Rollers 3. Yeah. And see, I enjoyed those characters. They're misguided in what they do. They might seem fanatical, but at the same time, they're also honest and forthright. And as Reverend Graves says, we don't put on no show. And to me, they represent a kind of a duality in religion, and that they believe in their cause is just, but sometimes they do a lot of collateral damage along the way.
And on a side note, how difficult has it been in getting this novel into like every bookstore here in town?
Well, I tried to pitch it to Barnes & Noble, but you have a major, there's a process in publishing where if you buy it, if you publish in lot sizes, 5,000, 10,000,
yeah,
then you're issued a number for that. But Melange Books does print on demand,
yeah,
and so you're printing one at a time through a machine, and you do have an ISBN number, but to get a space on their shelves, you had to have a different, larger publishing number to get that same space on every store.
And what have you done to market some of your books, including like yourself as a writer out there, especially in this tough industry?
Oh, there was a lot of online blogs. In fact, there's Coffee Time Romance. I did an interview back in January 2nd, which apparently is the 9th most seen blog on that website in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I was taken aback by that. I was just blown away how much interest that generated.
Wow, really? So like if you ever wanted to see this book become maybe a movie someday, what do you think you would have to do in order to get that done?
Part of it is just chance. There's some rather strange ways that books get turned into movies. Maybe it's a friend of the producer or a friend of a director who just happened to be reading a book. It doesn't even have to be a really popular book or widespread book. They read it and say, "This would be interesting if we put this in cinema format." Mm-hmm. And that's happened with some rather obscure books. I think there's a short story called Who Goes There that got turned into John Carpenter's The Thing. Then John Carpenter would take a lot of obscure stories, like a book called Vampires that he turned into a movie.
Do the critics ever give you a hard time concerning your style of writing? Because when I was reading it, I'll be honest with you, there were just maybe a couple times where I kind of had to read the sentence over maybe 1 or 2 times just to get the visual picture.
Yeah, you actually kind of rely on negative criticism, just saying, well, maybe I should, I didn't like exactly what they said, but maybe there's a point to be made there, if not the same one they're making. And still, I'm developing my craft now, and my publisher is telling me that Fire and Life is coming along a lot more smoothly to read than the Squad 5 novels have, because those are my earlier attempts. My tendency is to kind of get lost in the weeds of the scientific details, and I have to remind myself that not everyone is as fluent in that as I am.
I understand that there was a novel that you did before this called Tampered Tales, mm-hmm. and you have a copy over here that you wanted to show the audience. Now, there's apparently like one true story in it, from what you told me. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Bride of the Blackbird. It is it took place in the very first 3 days of summer in 2010. And it was.
It happened here on campus. Right?
Yeah, it was on the way to work. It was down 4800 near the Jones Dairy, which is now the Tazewell Heritage Center. And I later learned 2 years later. I learned later that June is fight season for a type of songbird, a blackbird, where they just pick a fight with everything,
including humans,
including human beings. And walking to work. This blackbird, the male, because it's the black coloration and the yellow beak, lands on a utility pole and looks down at me and gives me this singular, short, harsh call. And I'm thinking, okay, he's signaling that he thinks I'm a threat and he's warning me away. But I'm just walking to work like I did for the last 9 years at that point.
Yeah.
And I can't fathom what's going on in this bird's head.
So he's just gawking at you.
Yeah. And I look up at the pole. And I realized from his perspective that's just like a cat, the way a cat would do it, and I thought that was the wrong answer. And for 3 days, this bird would just mob me on the way to work.
Mob you, like snap at your hair?
Yeah, it's like Buzz the Tower, like in Top Gun, you know. And just zip by and challenge me, you know. And I realized from his defense perimeter that I suspected he was defending a nest.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is a James Thurber story that I'm living.
Yeah.
For those who are familiar with James Thurber, he did a lot of satirical stories, a lot of comedy, often dealing with the neuroses of the human condition and expressed in animal form. And I realized this story needs to be told from the bird's perspective.
Yeah. John Steiner, I thank you for coming on to the show, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
For more information where you could find John Steiner's paperback novels online, you could visit walkingotherworlds.com, melangebooks.com, lulu.com, amazon.com, and last but not least, barnesandnoble.com. But until then, I thank you for joining us here at SLCC Talk Show, and we'll see you all next time.